The story starts with a girl desperately pleading for her innocence, but her father ignores her cries and forcefully drags her along. Earlier, inside the palace, chaos erupted as the princess was poisoned, and Lady Juvelian was accused by a former partner, Miko, sparking palace-wide suspicion. Despite Juvelian's vehement protests and their complicated history, the accusations persisted. The Emperor's harsh decision to imprison her in the ominous Chamber of Shadows left Juvelian feeling abandoned, invoking painful memories of her distant father. Her despair deepens as her father hands her a dagger, and her encounter with the tyrant crown prince adds to her fear. Tragically, the story concludes with Juvelian taking her own life, despite the crown prince's belated intervention. The narrative then shifts to a different scene, hinting at a mysterious reincarnation or rebirth, setting the stage for a complex and intriguing storyline. Juvelian contemplates ending her relationship with Mikhail, a decision that initially surprises him, but she's determined to avoid the tragic destiny predicted in her novel. Mikhail, in response, angrily tells her not to show her face again, and her unexpectedly cheerful reaction leaves him baffled, wondering if it's all a ploy for attention. Later, she encounters her father, Duke Legis, and decides to break the news of her breakup with Mikhail. To her surprise, Duke Legis reacts unexpectedly. Juvelian seeks refuge in her room, where her maid mistakes her yawns for tears. Misunderstandings continue when the maid mentions Juvelian's heartbreak to Duke Legis. On a sunny morning, Juvelian wakes up with a sense of optimism, anticipating a good day. However, her routine takes an unexpected turn when her father, Duke Legis, who rarely shares meals with her, summons her for breakfast. The atmosphere at the table grows awkward as the Duke's demeanor changes, influenced by the information he received from the maid the previous night. Feeling self-conscious, Juvelian believes her father sees her as pathetic compared to his heroic legacy from leading the empire to victory in a war. Duke Legis surprises her with a question about her ideal man, sparking concern that he plans to arrange her marriage for his succession. To avoid this, she boldly claims she seeks a man stronger than her father, a seemingly impossible feat, leading to doubts from her father. Soon after, he stuns her with an unexpected request to go out together, an unprecedented event in her 18 years of life. Their outing takes them to an arcade street filled with merchants promoting their wares. To Juvelian's bewilderment, her father purchases whatever catches her eye, leaving her perplexed. Amidst the bustling street, she encounters an uncomfortable crowd and seeks refuge in an armor store, where her encounter with a tall, sharp-eyed man adds an intriguing twist to the day. Juvelian's visit to the store takes an unexpected turn when a man's reaction annoys her. Initially attracted by his good looks, she quickly becomes irritated by his behavior and informs him that the item he's trying to buy is what she had her eye on, armor polish. Despite the merchant's confusion, Juvelian insists on her interest, making up an excuse about her accessories losing their shine. As the merchant fetches a large quantity of the polish from the storage room, the man takes what he needs, leaves a single gold coin, and departs. Juvelian approaches him to correct the price, inadvertently bumping into him, realizing he must be unfamiliar with the area. She discreetly explains that 1 gold coin is enough to purchase 10 armor polishes. Back with her father, Juvelian, feeling exhausted and bewildered by her father's peculiar behavior throughout the day, stumbles on the stairs, prompting her father to swiftly catch her and carry her back to their carriage. Although she requests to be put down, her father insists on carrying her. However, as he carries her, he imparts an unusual message, urging her to find someone she likes soon. A mysterious sensation suddenly overcomes Juvelian's body, causing her to faint in her father's arms, leaving him in a state of panic and uncertainty. After being unconscious for 4 days, Juvelian awakens from a dream in which her father is crying beside her bed, only to discover that her father is nowhere to be found. Legis briefly visits her but departs, leaving her somewhat disappointed. In her room, she discovers numerous gifts, flowers, and letters inquiring about her condition during her illness. Determined to shed her past reputation as the villainess, she plans to personally reply to these messages. One of her goals is to become independent through rigorous study, despite her family's wealth. However, when she heads to the library to study, she encounters her father there, leading to a series of relentless questioning about the book she's holding. The quiz is finally interrupted when Legis receives a guest, but he immediately tasks her with reading a strategy and tactics book. Exhausted, she discovers a pendant under one of the books, intending to return it to her father. However, while searching for him, she overhears Legis and a man named Max arguing in the aisle. Curious, Juvelian eavesdrops on Legis and Max's conversation, learning that Max is Legis's student. When she hears Legis say, "Sometimes people become much stronger in order to protect that weakness," it triggers memories of her time in the Chamber of Shadows and leads her to suspect that Legis may have someone he wants to protect. Legis adds that Max will likely find someone to protect one day. However, Max arrogantly responds that he hasn't found someone to protect, but believes he has found a rat. Confused, Juvelian takes Max's words literally, thinking there's an actual rat in the house. Legis, realizing Max is referring to Juvelian, sternly warns Max not to harm her, stating that he won't show mercy even if it's Max. Despite Legis's protective words, Juvelian remains unaware that Max sees her as Legis's weakness, believing that Max is referring to a literal rat. Returning to Legis's room, the butler informs him that Mikhail has been persistently sending letters to Juvelian, pressuring her for a response. In his letters, Mikhail condescends to Juvelian, enraging Legis, who orders the butler to ensure that none of Mikhail's letters reach Juvelian, instructing him to burn them all. Meanwhile, Juvelian receives an invitation from Rosemary, aimed at changing her negative fate in the story. She takes the opportunity to personally respond to the letter, adorning it with lace and flowers. Rosemary expresses her admiration for Juvelian despite her past unfriendly demeanor. The letter exchange becomes a topic of gossip among the ladies. Overhearing this discussion, Mikhail decides to attend Rosemary's party, perhaps seeking closure in his relationship with Juvelian. Juvel embarks on a shopping excursion to find the perfect present for Rosemary, accompanied by an excessive dozen of knights, as per her father's insistence. She visits Ian Fyodor's workshop, recognizing his future potential as a master craftsman, and commissions a gift for Rosemary. Meanwhile, at the Floyans' manor, the butler presents Legis with a list of potential suitors for Juvel. Upon seeing Maximilian Cassian's name on the list, Legis reacts with a frown and swiftly orders its removal. However, before he can fully address the matter, he receives urgent summons to the palace. While shopping, Juvel encounters a sparkling item that she believes would be perfect for her father, and as she contemplates the purchase, she is approached by Radian, Mikhail's cousin and a notorious gossip monger, who takes note of her choice with a mind full of curiosity. Legis is summoned to the Asha Empire Palace to investigate the assassination attempt, necessitating his stay there for a few days to safeguard the Emperor. Meanwhile, Max observes Legis's interactions with his knights, including inquiries about Juvel, and he derives satisfaction from the belief that Juvel is a vulnerability to Legis. In another part of the city, the Gossip King, Radian, relishes his favorite pastime by sowing discord. He informs Mikhail that he witnessed Juvel buying cufflinks for a new acquaintance. As night falls, Juvel anxiously awaits her father's return, wanting to return a pendant she found and gift him the cufflinks. But, in typical comedic fashion, her maid misunderstands the situation, assuming Juvel is upset because her father isn't at home. In a surprising turn of events, Max sneaks into Juvel's room, but his intentions remain unclear. However, Juvel, awakened by his presence, calmly informs him that he's entered the wrong room. Max is captivated by Juvel's fearless demeanor and recognizes her as the girl from the armor shop. They soon establish that Max is not an assassin, but rather her father's student, much to Juvel's relief. Despite her initial fright, thinking Max might be a ghost, the situation takes a tense turn when a palace guard hears voices in the ladies' room. In response, Max draws his sword, pressing it against Juvel's neck to ensure her silence. As Juvel and Max navigate the delicate situation, she catches on to Max's unspoken instructions regarding what to say to the palace guards, allowing them to return without raising suspicion. Once the guards are gone, she requests Max to release her. Max reveals that he has no home, prompting Juvel to feel sympathy and speculate that he was kicked out of his home, seeking her father for help, but getting lost in the process. She offers him a place to stay in her room for the night, providing him with a pillow, and then drifts into a deep sleep. This unexpected turn of events frustrates Max, whose original purpose was to eliminate Legis's perceived weakness, but now he finds himself next to Juvel, who seems to be his target, and he suddenly feels overwhelmingly sleepy. Startled awake, she discovers Max sleeping right beside her on the bed and can't help but notice his good looks. However, her worries about a potential scandalous situation taking place reach irrational heights, as she fears they might end up in the newspaper. When she tries to wake Max up by reaching out, he defensively reacts, causing Juvel to fall to the ground. Max questions how he ended up there, while Juvel finds his demeanor reminiscent of a grouchy cat she knew when she was young. Anticipating the arrival of her maid, Juvel instructs Max to hide in the closet, explaining that it's to avoid any misunderstandings about them spending the night together. The maid attempts to enter Juvel's room but finds the door locked. Inside, Juvel closes the closet door with Max inside and responds to the maid, who's concerned about her locking the door. Juvel explains that she was simply afraid of someone barging in, but the maid reassures her that even thieves avoid the Floyan household. Meanwhile, Max waits patiently in the closet, contemplating his own irrational actions and reflecting on Juvel's unusual reactions. He hears strange sounds from Juvel's room, sparking eccentric thoughts in his mind. Unbeknownst to him, the maid is applying ointment to her bruises, caused by Max himself. Juvel eventually opens the closet door, inviting Max to join her for breakfast, and he can't help but blush at her kindness. Juvel unknowingly serves Max a cucumber sandwich, not realizing he despises cucumbers. Max decides to summon his courage and tries the sandwich, momentarily forgetting his original purpose for visiting Juvel's room. Meanwhile, in the Ashet Empire Palace, Duke Elios meets with the Emperor and suggests setting a trap, rather than keeping Duke Legis exclusively to protect the Emperor. The Emperor appears displeased but is confident in his control over Legis through a mysterious ring. Back in Juvel's room, she reads a book, feeling drowsy as she watches Max sleep. When Max wakes up and questions why she's staring at him, Juvel wonders when he plans to leave, speculating that he might stay until Legis returns and kicks him out. However, she remembers she still has a gift for her father and asks Max's opinion about it, inadvertently fostering a false impression. Max's curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks Juvel to whom she intends to give the cufflinks. Juvel's ambiguous response only adds to the misunderstanding. Max, aware of Juvel's previous interest in Mikhail, assumes she's giving the cufflinks to him to mend their relationship, and he responds with a harsh tone. Annoyed by Max's reaction, Juvel clarifies that she wants to get along with her father and intends to give the cufflinks to him. Max smiles upon learning the truth but still comments on the impracticality of giving cufflinks to a swordsman. However, he reassures Juvel that her father will appreciate the gift. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Palace, Legis is resting in a tree but gets off quickly when his knight brings news about Juvel. The knight explains that Juvel has been anxious due to Legis's absence and is too sick to leave her room, prompting Legis to clench his fists and decide to visit the Emperor immediately. As Juvel struggles to write a letter for her father, Max secretly watches her. She asks Max about his usual conversations with Legis, but he decides to keep the truth to himself, not wanting to reveal that Legis often brags about her. Juvel then decides to write the letter on her own. An hour later, Max is surprised by the outcome. It's a letter of apology. He wonders how Legis will react when he reads it. Meanwhile, in the palace, the Emperor is angry because Legis hasn't caught the assassin. Legis suspects Max's involvement and realizes that Max may be trying to create conflict between him and the Emperor. Despite his anger, Legis gives the Emperor a hostile look. It's decided that Legis will stay one more day to guard the Emperor. Later, Juvel goes to her father's study to leave the present on his desk, but stumbles upon a list of suitors for her. One named Maximilian Cassian Aché the crown prince, is specifically circled, leading to another misunderstanding. Juvel believes her father is planning to marry her off to the tyrant and psychopathic crown prince, unaware that Legis had actually wanted to remove that name from the list. Still reeling from looking at the suitor list, Juvel recalls the first time Legis asked her about her ideal man. Sure, the crown prince has it all, but he's also a heartless psychopath who doesn't hesitate to kill people. Even in Juvel's previous life, he tried to torture her. This realization leaves Juvel feeling depressed, and she can't help but cry her heart out. Meanwhile, Max is waiting for Juvel in her room and catches an assassin sent by the Empress to inform him that he needs to return to the Empire immediately. When Juvel returns to her room, she starts thinking hard to come up with a plan to avoid being sold to the crown prince. However, Max is nowhere to be found. As she searches for him, her eyes catch a piece of paper on the table. It reads, "Don't come looking for me. I'll come back when it's time." It seems that someone has become attached to her, even though she never asked for it. While riding on his horse, Max thinks about the letter he left for Juvel on the table and wonders if staying with Juvel is a natural thing, if only the guard hadn't come to pick him up yet. Meanwhile, Juvel falls asleep and wakes up to find that Max is no longer around. When she sees the gift for Legis, she starts worrying that he will be upset about the pendant she found. The maid notices that Juvel has been acting strange lately and assumes it's because the Duke is not around. So she suggests that Juvel take a walk in the sun. The maids have already prepared snacks and cakes, but Juvel's favorite strawberry cake is missing. The maid freaks out and says she's going to make one, leaving Juvel alone. Juvel thinks it's for the best since she needs to solve the pendant and suitor problems before her father returns home. Shortly after, Legis arrives, which shocks Juvel. She asks her father if he has eaten dinner and invites Legis to eat with her. Legis arrived earlier than Juvel expected and tells her that he will never let her be alone again. Confused by what Legis said, Juvel freezes up. Legis requests to have dinner with Juvel, holding her hand as they walk to the dining room. Once there, he asks about the party she will attend and if she already has a partner. Juvel becomes anxious. She then says she's still struggling to choose among the potential partners who have expressed interest in being her companion. Back in Juvel's room, she found many letters requesting to be her partner. Among them were Sir Boromir, famous for his exceptional swordplay and manners as the Imperial Knight, Sir Edmund Rowain, renowned for his beauty and wit, and Sir Ronald Crocus, who was running as the next candidate for Minister of Foreign Affairs. After Marilyn, Juvel's maid, left the room, Legis notices that she's holding a letter and inquires if Juvel has decided on her partner. Marilyn reveals that it's Sir Edmund. Legis asks her about Sir Edmund's reputation, and the maid enthusiastically explains. However, suddenly Legis disappears and decides to personally investigate if Sir Edmund is the right partner for his daughter. Intimidated by Legis's glare, Sir Edmund can't utter a word and trembles the whole time. Then Legis stands up and declares, "You are unqualified." Sir Edmund asks why Legis comes to visit him in the middle of the night, but all he hears is "You're unqualified." At the Floyen residence, the item that Juvel ordered from the Theodore workshop has arrived, and it's a magnificent gift. She is informed that Sir Edmund has come to reply to her letter. Fascinated by Edmund's face, she still remembers Max. Suddenly, Edmund falls to his knees to apologize to Juvel for accepting another lady as his partner, saying that he thought Juvel already had a partner by the rumor spread through society. She tells him that it isn't true, but she accepts his apology. Relieved that Juvel forgives him, he asks her to have dinner with him, but Legis's glare makes him take back the invitation and decide to go back home right away. Juvel looks perplexed. In the Salon Blooms, where the nobles gather to gossip, Max overhears them talking about Juvel and who will be her partner at Rosemary's party. There are rumors that Juvel has already moved on from Mikhail. Max becomes annoyed by the gossip and makes a commotion by dropping his glass. He declares that it's sickening to hear people gossiping. Max enters the room and is greeted by Madame Fresha, the owner. She remarks that it is unusual to see Max being affected by rumors. Madame Fresha wonders why Max has been acting strange since his return from Floyen's house. Max inquires about the rumors surrounding Lady Florian. Madame Fresha explains that the gossip about Lady Florian's love affair is untrue. She reveals that Juvel has sent a letter to Sir Edmund Rowaine, inviting him to be her partner for the party, but he has declined. Max is angry upon hearing this. Madame Fresha then informs Max that Juvel has been rumored to be meeting a secret admirer at night, and the rumor is traced back to Sir Radian Droyle, Mikhail's cousin. Max stands up and asks Madame Fresha to find him something that could work as weapon against the Hessen and Droyle families. But right after he's gone, Madame Fresha realized that Legis already bought that information. Meanwhile, in Florian residence, Juvel is having a quality tea time with her father. Just 5 minutes ago, after Sir Edmund left, Legis came and asked Juvel to have tea with him. Legis suddenly asks if she already has a partner. Since she was previously rejected, Juvel is afraid Legis is going to bring up matchmaking again, so she says she'll think about it. Legis states that if she can't find a partner, she has to inform him, but the way he asks creates another misunderstanding. Juvel asks permission to leave first, but Legis says he also needs to take care of something, and the word something always misleads Juvel. Max is waiting for Legis to leave and sees his carriage going away. Max then enters Juvel's room, and now he feels like it's his own room. Max scans the room, searching for Juvel. He wonders if she has gone to ask someone else to be her partner. It is strange that he suddenly cares about who Juvel's partner is going to be. Then, he hears Juvel's voice calling him from behind, and she asks him what he's doing in her room. Max corners Juvel, demanding to know where she has been. Juvel replies that she was downstairs, and Max's face lights up with a smile. Juvel sighs, and Max moving closer to her. He asks her what is wrong, and Juvel is taken aback by how close he is to her. She tells him that she has a lot on her mind, and Max offers to listen. However, Juvel is hesitant, so she asks Max to promise not to tell her father. Max readily agrees and even offers to give her everything he has if he tells Legis by accident. Hearing that, Juvel laughs and wonders why Max is betting everything he has when he doesn't even have a house. Max blushes at her smile. Juvel opens up to Max, sharing the burden of the negative rumors that have been circulating about her secretly seeing another man. She reveals that everyone who has asked to be her partner has run away because of the rumors. Max, blushing, imagines what he would do if Juvel asked him to be her partner. In your dream! Juvel confesses that actually she doesn't care if she doesn't have a partner, but the real problem is that her father is trying to marry her off to someone. Max is furious at the idea that Legis is forcing her to marry. Therefore, Juvel has to show Legis that she already has a partner. Max suggests that there might be a suitable partner for Juvel closer than she expected, and Juvel thinks for a moment before realizing who Max means. She thanks Max for the suggestion, and Max's cheeks turn red as he thinks about being Juvel's partner. However, Juvel surprises him by saying she is going to ask Geraldine to be her partner. Max is shocked and enraged, demanding to know who Geraldine is as he had thought Juvel was going to ask him. It turns out that Juvel has someone else in mind. Who the hell is Geraldine? Max asks Juvel about Geraldine, and Juvel explains that he is her cousin and also her knight. This puts Max at ease, but he can't help but wonder why he feels relieved just by knowing who Juvel's partner is. As Max prepares to leave, Juvel hands him a pouch of money and offers him a place to stay if he needs it, leaving Max blushing. Meanwhile, Legis intercepts Sir Ronald Crocus on his way to Florian's manor. Legis tries to intimidate Sir Ronald and tells him to turn back because he is not qualified to be Juvel's partner. But Sir Ronald is determined and insists that Juvelian will ultimately choose him. When Sir Ronald refers to Legis's daughter only by her first name, Legis becomes angry and Sir Ronald quickly retreats. At Florian's manor, Juvel is contemplating the rumor about her secret lover, suspecting that Sir Droyle might have spread it. She believes that if Legis wears the cufflinks, the rumor will vanish immediately. Juvel and Legis have tea together, and she presents him with the pendant and cufflinks, leaving him speechless. Judging by his reaction, Juvel realizes it might be too much to ask Legis to wear the cufflinks. Juvel brings up the topic of finding a partner for the upcoming party, But before she can say anything, her father says that he will attend the party with her. Assuming that Juvel was trying to ask him to be her partner and leaving Juvel in shock. Max looks disturbed, his thoughts seemingly consumed by Juvel. Madame Freja, it appears that she is one of Max's knights, interrupts his thoughts to inform him about Victor, who is acting as Max's proxy. The Emperor's men suspect something is amiss, and Max tells Freja to instruct Victor to act more convincingly. Freja then informs Max about the rumors surrounding Juvel, warning him that the nobles will be on the lookout for Lady Rosemary's party to slander and embarrass her. In response, Max orders Freja to attend the party over the weekend and carry out a job. At the party, some ladies are eagerly anticipating Juvel's arrival and speculating about who her partner might be. Madame Freja, overhearing their conversation, joins in and suggests that they can identify Juvel's secret lover by finding the person wearing the cufflinks. This piques their interest, particularly since Mikhail is also in attendance. On their way to Rosemary's party, Legis assures Juvel that he will be by her side, so she doesn't need to worry. When they arrive, the guests' attention quickly turns to the striking appearance of Juvel and Legis as they step out of their carriage. Juvel reflects on her past and how she craved attention after being abandoned by her father. She does not want to seek his love again and even plans to run away from him, as he arranged for her to marry the crown prince. She is curious about Legis's feelings towards her, as he treats her like she is precious to him. As Legis holds Juvel's hand to steady her, everyone notices the cufflinks he is wearing. They realize that the cufflinks were a gift for her father, but some still doubt it and suggest that it might be another cufflink she bought last minute. Legis's angry glare frightens them. Mikhail sees that and arrogantly assumes that means Juvel is not interested in any man but him. Rosemary and her mother greet Legis and Juvel. At first, Rosemary is hesitant to greet Juvel, but she eventually does so cheerfully and expresses her gratitude for Juvel's attendance. Juvel gives Rosemary the gift, which makes her very happy, and the other ladies comment on how innovative it is. Rosemary asks Juvel where she got it, and to everyone's surprise, Juvel reveals that it came from the Fyodor workshop, making them view her in a positive light. Feeling tired from socializing, Juvel steps outside for some fresh air. Max secretly watches her from a nearby tree and is shocked to see her crying. As usual, the tears came after she yawned so hard. Max bounds down from the tree, noticing Juvel's tears, and asks her why she is crying. Juvel is taken aback by Max's sudden appearance. As he gently wipes away her tears, Max tells her not to cry. He inquires who caused her pain, sounding genuinely concerned. But Juvel tells him that if he wants to help her, he should watch his manner towards others. Since she cares about him, she explains to him that if he talks casually to nobles, he could be sentenced to death. She emphasizes that respect towards her is crucial, as it impacts how others treat her. Max begrudgingly agrees. Curious, Juvel asks Max why he's there. Max shyly admits that he had other business there, but in fact, he just couldn't resist seeing Juvel. Max asks Juvel where her partner is, but she tells him that her father is in the hall. Max had assumed that Geraldine was Juvel's partner, but it turned out to be Legis instead. As they talk, the music starts to play, and Max asks Juvel to dance with him. Juvel is hesitant at first, but Max teases her by saying that he doesn't dance with just anyone, which makes Juvel blush. To her surprise, Max turns out to be a great dancer. Suddenly, Juvel trips on her foot, and Max catches her, causing their faces to be inches apart. Legis, who sees the situation from afar, becomes angry and tells Max to stay away from her. Before this situation happened, Legis was trying to blend in with the other guests. He saw Juvel heading out to the terrace and thought she must have been looking for some fresh air. However, Mikhail assumed Juvel wanted him to follow her out, but Legis noticed what was on Mikhail's mind and stopped him with a glare. Legis was upset with Mikhail because he dared to look down on his precious daughter. However, he then heard Juvel talking with someone, and when he saw the silhouette, he realized it was a man she was with. As their faces got closer, Legis became enraged and rushed over to them to avoid anything happening to Juvel. After discovering that the man with Juvel is Max, he can't believe that Max would pursue his precious daughter. Despite being furious, he recalls that he had taken Max as his student, fulfilling his promise to Max's mother. But Legis doesn't want Max to get close to Juvel, as he believes that Max is nothing more than a vicious and arrogant prince, despite his good looks and sword skills. Juvel worries that Legis may hurt his hand, as he crushes the wineglass in anger. Seeing her concern, Legis puts on a soft smile and gently asks her to leave from there. Max takes Juvel's hand and asks if her foot is injured, but Legis smacks Max's hand away and tells him it's none of his business. He then lifts Juvel into his arms and tells Max not to come to his house again, as he will be the one to visit Max. Everyone is staring at Legis carrying Juvel, making her feel uneasy. She asks him to let her down, but Legis declines and tells her not to push herself since she's hurt. Actually, Juvel feels embarrassed being looked at by others like that. The other guests are speaking ill of Juvel as they see Legis carrying her, commenting that she is an attention seeker. However, Rosemary interjects and reminds them that Juvel had been unwell in the past and may not have fully recovered yet. The other guests agree, adding that Juvel has always had a weak constitution. Meanwhile, Mikhail overhears their conversation and recalls a past incident when he had thought Juvel was pretending to be weak to gain his attention. But it turned out her condition was genuine. In Juvel's room, Legis advises her to rest and avoid going out for a few days. Juvel is puzzled by her father's sudden concern for her well-being. She begins to suspect that Legis is only concerned about her health so that he can marry her off to the crown prince. Juvel believed she had avoided any potential issues by ending her relationship with Mikhail, but now it seems she may have landed herself in even greater trouble. In Salon Blooms, Max can't stop thinking about Juvel since that day. He even dreams about the moment when he caught Juvel and imagines their faces getting even closer. He then orders Madame Freja to send an invitation to Juvel, but she tells him it will be difficult since Juvel has become very famous and receives many invitations from others. Meanwhile, Juvel is overwhelmed by the numerous invitations she receives. When the butler gives her another letter from Earl Harrand, the Empress's mother's family, she doesn't even have the energy to respond. Juvel believes that Legis is busy trying to arrange a marriage with the crown prince and feels like she needs to find a way out soon. Suddenly, there's a knock on her window, and it turns out to be Max. Juvel comes up with an idea and invites him inside, asking him to date her. Apparently, the letter from Earl Harrand was the one that Max had ordered Freja to send to Juvel. Knowing that Juvel hadn't replied, Max comes to check on her. He even has to wait until Legis is not home so he can visit Juvel. And look what he got, a proposal to date from Juvel. Max is overjoyed and even starts to daydream about starting a family with Juvel, but his hopes are dashed when she reveals that the relationship will be strictly contractual. Juvel believes that Max would be the perfect candidate to pose as her partner, given his sword skills and his status as Legis's student. But Max seems displeased with that. Juvel tries to make a good offer to Max so that he will accept it, but his dissatisfaction only seems to grow. Then she reveals that the contract will come to an end when she leaves the house, which confuses Max. He asks why she would willingly enter into something that would make her miserable. Juvel explains that her father has arranged for her to marry someone she cannot refuse. Curious, Max asks who it is. Juvel insists on his promise of secrecy before revealing that it is Maximilian Cassian Achet. Max initially didn't pay much attention to what Juvel was saying, but soon realizes that she mentioned his name. He feels awkward and uncomfortable knowing the truth. Juvel wants to show Legis that she is dating someone to avoid being married off to the crown prince. However, Max tries to convince her that the crown prince might be like her, and that marrying the crown prince could benefit her since he will be the next ruler, but Juvel refuses and would rather be alone forever than marry the sadistic tyrant. Max is shocked and leaves, feeling dejected. Juvel wishes that Max would at least give her a yes or no answer. Max returns to Salon Blooms in a gloomy mood, perplexing Madame Freja. He abruptly inquires about a woman's desire to avoid her future spouse, prompting Madame Freja to ask if there could be any motive beyond simple dislike for the prospective husband. She suspects an encounter between Max and Juvel, but is met with his denial. which almost leads to a revealing slip about a previous conversation with Juvel. Max, sensing Madame Fresha's eagerness, avoids sharing further details and shifts the conversation. However, Madame Fresha discloses disturbing news that the Empress Isabelle Rosti Ache, Max's stepmother, has dispatched another assassin to eliminate him. Max recalls Juvel's rejection of a marriage proposal from the tyrannical crown prince and, in an unexpected twist, chooses to spare the assassin's life, leaving Madame Fresha astonished as she's never seen him act this way. Max then inquires about any marriage proposals, but, upon hearing none, swiftly departs Salon Blooms. In the Floyan residence, Juvel and Legis share a seemingly pleasant dinner together, though Juvel secretly hopes her father won't bring up the topic of marriage. Out of the blue, Legis mentions the crown prince, catching Juvel off guard. She attempts to steer the conversation in a different direction, focusing on the history of the First Empire and its artifacts. This causes Legis to grow pale, and he abruptly excuses himself, claiming an urgent matter needs his attention. Juvel is left perplexed as this behavior is unusual for her father, leaving her wondering about the sudden turn of events. Legis is filled with anxiety after discovering that Juvel is researching the imperial family, fearing that she might uncover the truth about the ring. He assumes that Juvel may have heard unfavorable rumors about the cruel crown prince, yet she seems accepting of it. In his concern for her happiness, Legis decides that he must take action. When Juvel addresses him, Legis is startled, but she expresses genuine concern for him. Although she is curious if she did something wrong during dinner, Legis reassures her with a smile and suggests they go inside due to the cold. During their walk, he encourages Juvel to learn more about the crown prince, further confirming her suspicion that he intends to marry her off to the tyrannical crown prince. While Juvel outwardly agrees to her father's wishes, she secretly has no intention of complying. As Juvel departs, Legis makes a firm resolution to ensure her happiness and prevent her from ending up with Max. Meanwhile, Juvel contemplates proposing a contractual relationship to Max once again. Feeling down after recent events, Juvel receives a letter from Lady Rosemary inquiring about her health and inviting her to a tea party. Juvel sees this as an opportunity to learn more about the crown prince's reputation among high society and discover what he dislikes. Meanwhile, Lady Rosemary expresses her joy upon hearing that Juvel has recovered and is interested in attending the tea party. Other ladies are also excited to meet Juvel. Lady Rosemary then asks Lady Veronica Joanna Terrence if she is okay with hosting the party, to which Veronica reluctantly agrees. Veronica is burdened by Rosemary's decision to invite Juvelian to the tea party without consulting her first. When Veronica mentions Juvelian, Mikhail flatters her and asks her to invite him as well, feigning concern for her. Caught up in the moment, Veronica agrees to invite him, unaware of Mikhail's ulterior motives. While shopping for a dress for a tea party, Juvel is accompanied by many guards. A kind stranger offers her fashion advice, and the guards appreciate her kindness. Yup, she's Madame Frisia, who advises Juvel to choose a comfortable dress. Later, Juvel sees a commotion involving Max and Baron Gordon nearby. When the situation escalates, Juvel steps in to stop the argument, surprising Max. Baron Gordon, initially intimidated by Duke Floyan's daughter, Juvel, attempts to impress her but is met with her sharp observation of his mistreatment of others. Juvel reveals Max as her personal guard and warns Baron Gordon not to harm any guards of her household. When Baron Gordon tries to accuse Max of wrongdoing, it becomes clear he was merely jealous of Max's attention and planned to harass him. Juvel diffuses the situation by taking responsibility for Max's behavior, proposing that Baron Gordon insult her in return. Baron Gordon, unable to disrespect Juvel, apologizes, and she instructs him to apologize to Max instead, who glares him into fleeing. Max thanks Juvel but makes her uncomfortable with his gesture, eventually expressing a desire for a contractual relationship. Juvel quickly covers Max's mouth with her hands, signaling him to keep quiet and not reveal anything important to others. Their actions appear to be causing further confusion for those around them. Juvel tells Max to follow her, and once they are inside the carriage, She explains that she thought Max was saying no since he didn't answer her. The reason for Max's delayed response is that the sadist tyrant Juvel hates so much is actually him. But he can't reveal his identity yet. Juvel then asks Max why he went to the arcade since he wasn't shopping. And Max becomes irritated and sensitive, saying what's wrong with that. Actually, the information that Madame Fresha brought to Max about the tea party that Juvel will attend, and which will also have Mikhail in attendance, made Max upset. But knowing Max would go to Floyan residence, Madame Fresha informed him that Juvel wasn't there but was going to the arcade. And so here he is. Max becomes furious when he is reminded about Mikhail and decides to accept Juvel's proposal of a contractual relationship to protect her from him. Suddenly, Max asks Juvel why she proposed to him. Juvel explains that it's because he is her father's student. Max is shocked, thinking she was asking to date him, not because she likes him, while he was taking it seriously. But then Juvel adds that Max is the only man she is comfortable doing this with. Max is happy after hearing that, while Juvel thinks to herself that Max's face is definitely her style, despite his personality. Juvel then asks about the payment. But Max seems displeased by what he hears and says that he doesn't need the payment. He is just repaying his debt for getting her injured last time. Juvel suddenly grabs Max's hand, happy to find that he's so nice at heart. Feeling embarrassed, Max asks her to let go of his hand. Juvel tells him that they have to pretend to be lovers now, so they can't avoid skinship. She also states that as long as they're in a contractual relationship, they need to hold hands, lock arms, and call each other by name romantically. Juvel then realizes they haven't introduced themselves yet. Just as Juvel is about to introduce herself, Max interrupts her and tells her that he has known her name all along. This revelation bothers Juvel as she realizes that despite knowing her name, Max has been referring to her as you. However, Juvel quickly adds that she knows Max's name as well, having heard her father call him by that name. As Juvel thinks Max is a nice name, she believes that someday he'll become a great person as well. Suddenly, Juvel resumes discussing the contract, causing an immediate shift in Max's mood. Although he has already declined payment, Juvel insists that the contract is necessary for their mutual protection. Despite this, Max assures her that he trusts her and believes she won't harm him. Juvel is deeply moved by the level of trust he places in her, as no one has ever trusted her like that before. Juvel explains that he can't be so naive and should not trust anyone, even those closest to him. She insists on making the contract. Though Max said he understands, Juvel is still hesitant and unsure if Max truly comprehends the gravity of the situation. Suddenly, Juvel pulls Max closer, insisting that they need to synchronize their mouth. Max is taken aback, and Juvel instructs him to come closer as it's imperative. Max is flustered, thinking it's too soon for such an intimate interaction and worried that it might be his first kiss. As Juvel approaches, Max shuts his eyes, only to hear her whisper that her personal guard, Geraldine, will inquire about how they met, and they must match their stories. As the carriage shakes, Juvel turns her head, and Max feels embarrassed as he comprehends what Juvel meant. So he got his hopes high again to be slammed down to the ground? Oh, my poor Max. Upon their arrival, Geraldine demands an explanation as expected by Juvel. Introducing Max as her lover, Juvel is met with disbelief from the guards, as they've been guarding her closely but never seen Max. Accusing Juvel only picks Max for his looks. However, Juvel calmly explains that they met at Count Meisen's party, much to Geraldine's surprise. Despite his mercenary attire, Geraldine thinks that Max might be a noble and wonders which family he belongs to. Juvel clarifies that Max is not a noble but one of the hired mercenaries. This revelation further shocks the guards. Finally, Geraldine presses Juvel to tell him how they met. Before arriving, Max and Juvel had made an agreement in the carriage about what to tell Geraldine. Max reluctantly agreed to go along with whatever Juvel said. Juvel tells Geraldine that she saved Max and proceeds to tell the fake story. Max was surrounded by a group of noble women, but then Juvel arrived and asked the ladies if they had seen Mikhail. The ladies ran away, and Max claimed that Juvel had saved him and he wanted to repay her. The guards are left speechless and suddenly change their opinion of Max, saying that he may look scary but is actually a softie at heart. Juvel also adds that after meeting him several times, she thought he was the one. After telling the fake story, Juvel invites Max to come inside. Geraldine, who is still in shock, summarizes the story as Juvel being interested in Max just because of his looks. Before they go inside, Juvel is upset to find that Geraldine is glaring at Max because he's a commoner. But actually, Max is the one who's been glaring at them non-stop from the start. Geraldine notices that Max has an unusual aura and wonders who he really is. As Juvel grabs Max's hand, she tells him that she'll protect him no matter what happens. Although he thinks it's nonsense, it still makes him happy. Suddenly, they hear a crash sound of a cup falling down. Legis trembles in great shock upon seeing her precious daughter holding hands with Max. To make matters worse, Juvel introduces Max as the man she loves, leaving Legis even more shocked. Despite Legis having assigned guards to protect Juvel and nothing out of the ordinary happening, the sight before him was unexpected and disrupted his plans of having a peaceful evening with his daughter. Juvel is taken aback by Legis's reaction, which is much stronger than she expects. Legis appears irate as he demands to know what is happening. Juvel remembers that Legis usually doesn't care if she does something wrong, but now he seems furious. She guesses that it's because things aren't going according to his plan. Holding onto Max's arm tightly, Juvel confirms that she and Max are dating officially. Legis remains incredulous about what he heard. They move to the drawing room. Max courteously pulls out a chair for Juvel to take a seat. And in gratitude, Juvel returns a smile. Seeing this unfold before him, Legis can't reconcile Max's kindness towards Juvel with his own perception of Max's cruelty. He suspects that Max is manipulating his daughter into loving him and using her to hasten the rebellion. Legis inquires about how they met, causing Juvel to become apprehensive. She realizes that while she was able to deceive Geraldine and the guards, her father would be harder to trick. In order to make her story more convincing, Juvel decides to blend some truth with lies. She tells Legis that Max was searching for him when he wasn't at home, and because it was late at night, she invited him to sleep in her room since she believed he had nowhere else to go. The mention of the word sleep causes Legis to boil in rage, but Juvel quickly assures him that nothing happened, which Max confirms with a nod. Legis insists that nothing should happen between Juvel and Max. Otherwise, Max won't leave that place alive. Legis seems desperate, knowing that instead of informing Derek, the butler, to find Max a room, Juvel let Max into her room. Juvel argues that it was too late at night and that Max wouldn't hurt her since he's Legis's student. Legis, on the other hand, knows that Max is an unpredictable and dangerous person, and despite his attempts to reform Max's character, Max remains a tyrant who could potentially harm Juvel. As Juvel seems unaware of the potential danger that Max poses, Legis deeply regrets taking him in as his student. Juvel interrupts Legis' deep thoughts by saying that since she's only ever had unrequited love until now, having someone she loves who loves her back is a miracle. She also reassures Legis that she won't bring shame to his name and requests his blessing for her relationship with Max. Legis is speechless. He remembers Juvel as a child, his beloved daughter, and he allowed her to do what she wanted because nothing she did would ever hurt him. However, this time, Legis states that he cannot give his blessing and asks them to break up. Juvel feels helpless, knowing her father is still determined to marry her off to the crown prince. But to their surprise, Max refuses to break up with Juvel. Max recalls the advice Legis once gave him, that people become stronger when they have someone precious to protect, and that he would find someone like that someday. Max grasps Juvel's shoulder and proclaims that he has finally discovered his precious one, the person he wants to protect, and it is none other than Juvel. Juvel is impressed by Max's remarkable acting skills. Legis interrupts him, still skeptical of Max's sudden change, as he had previously referred to Juvel as a rat, and now calls her precious. However, Max's reaction is exaggerated, stating that he won't just sit idly by if Legis gets in the way of him and Juvel, and that Legis, as his teacher, will take second place. Max's words only intensify Legis's anger, causing him to become even more furious, and he announces that he will no longer consider Max his student either. These beast fights are really something. Juvel turns pale as she never imagined things would happen like that. Max asks the confused Juvel to leave the room with him. As they step out, Legis shouts to stop and grabs Max's shoulder. Max glares at Legis and tells him not to tell him what to do. Juvel sees this as concerning and thinks that Max is going too far. However, she tells her father to calm down and assures him that she will handle the situation. Legis is surprised by how Juvel convinces him and loosens his grip on Max, watching them leave. While outside, Juvel expresses her gratitude towards Max for standing up for her, but also tells him that his actions towards her father crossed a line. She clarifies that she never wanted him to be disowned, nor did she want him to insult her father. Juvel believes that forcing something on someone who doesn't want it doesn't help them, but only benefits oneself. Max is taken aback and asks Juvel if she still needs his help. As Juvel takes Max's hand, she explains that she wants his help, but if he continues to help her in that way, she'll have no choice but to find another solution. Max then inquires about what Juvel would like him to do. Juvel requests that Max make amends with Legis and apologize to him. At first, Max is hesitant and almost declines the request, but seeing the sincerity in Juvel's eyes, he softens and agrees. Legis, who has been watching from a distance, is surprised to see Max give in to Juvel's request and begins to question if Max has truly changed. Max and Juvel enter the room, and Juvel offers her apologies for leaving earlier. She then tells Legis that Max wishes to speak with him. Max takes a bow and apologizes, but Legis is still skeptical of his sincerity. He suspects that Max is using his daughter to further his own agenda. Instead of accepting Max's apology, Legis rebuffs him and announces that he is no longer his student. Max is confirmed by this declaration that Legis never intended for him and Juvel to marry. Though Max doesn't understand how Juvel could have misunderstood things, his suspicious eyes indicate that he won't clear things up. As tensions rise between them, Juvel senses the need for a drastic action. She suddenly drops to her knees and apologizes, leaving both Max and Legis in shock. Juvel intends to ask for forgiveness from her father and assert that she will continue dating Max. Seeing this, Max is shocked and tells her to get up, insisting that he will do it instead. Juvel wonders why Max is so agitated and believes that he has no idea how scary Legis can be when he's angry. Juvel responds to Max by stating that she won't get up until she finishes talking to Legis. Upon hearing this, Legis shoves Max away and states that he understands and asks Juvel to get up. Juvel notices that both Max and her father suddenly seem to be getting along, but she believes it's too early to relax. She explains that Max's behavior was a result of his intense love for her and promises to help him improve. She asks Legis to forgive Max and he agrees immediately. Juvel is surprised by his swift reaction, realizing that it was easier than she had anticipated. While both Max and Legis continue to urge her to get up soon. And back to square one. While Juvel considers what to say, Legis suddenly says he will forgive what Max said, but he makes it clear that it doesn't mean he's approving of their relationship. Juvel tries to convince her father that he doesn't have to give permission right away, and asks him to wait and see how things go for a little while. Deep down in his heart, Legis still cannot allow their relationship, no matter how much Juvel begs. However, he has a plan to show Juvel what Max is really like in the hope that they will break up. Eventually, Legis agrees to Juvel's request, which makes both Max and Juvel relieved. Juvel thanks Legis, but he feels guilty for lying to her as he believes he needs to protect her. In Juvelian's room, Juvel is ecstatic that her father has given his approval to her relationship. As she and Max enjoy their tea, Juvel reminds him to draw up the contract and asks if there is anything he wants from her. Enchanted by Max's graceful manner of sipping tea, Juvel speculates whether he might be a runaway nobleman's son. Out of nowhere, Max blurts out that the tea is the most disgusting he's ever had. Juvel takes this as a sign that Max isn't a noble, considering his reaction to the tea, which was supposed to be of the highest quality and his father's favorite. Max finishes writing the contract and hands it over to Juvel. After going through the contract that Max had written, Juvel realizes that it's a mess and needs fixing. She spends some time editing it and finally presents the final version to Max, asking him to review it and suggest any changes. However, as soon as he reads it, he tears up the contract that Juvel had painstakingly put together. Juvel is left stunned by Max's sudden action. She thinks to herself that if Max had any issues with the contract, he could have simply communicated them to her. She recalls how Max had never considered her feelings in the past. He would leave without a word after she took care of him for days, suddenly disappear without answering her requests, and get angry at her more than a few times. Juvel realizes that if they are in a contract, they will have to see each other frequently, and she doesn't want someone to look down on her anymore. Then Juvel asserts that she wants to terminate their contract immediately. Let's get back to the contract that Juvel has worked so hard on. She told Max to read it slowly, and this is how Max read it. He thought they would be agreeing on a few basic rules. It turned out to be a detailed and formal contract. When he read the part about both parties having to report their location if they would be unreachable, Max found it to be excessive. He never even did that with his subordinates. The next section that bothered him was the clause that stated if feasible, the dates would take place in locations with a significant amount of people. Max ripped up the contract and threw it away, solely because of his pride. He felt like Juvel was treating him like a pet to show off to others. But upon seeing Max's actions, Juvel doesn't stay silent. She decides to break off the contract before they even sign it, which shocks Max to the core. Max explains that they have already obtained permission from Legis, so breaking off the contract is not an option. He brings up the fact that Juvel has to marry the crown prince and even badmouths himself, saying that if Juvel doesn't do the contract relationship with him, she'll have to marry the trash tyrant. It's as if he's fighting himself. But Juvel sticks to her choice, saying that they are not suitable for each other and will only exhaust each other if they continue. Seeing Juvel being stubborn, Max says she is being too hasty. Juvel points out the contract he ripped up, which shows that Max has no intention of compromising, and says she cannot sign a contract with someone like that. Max is surprised and recalls his behavior towards his subordinates when he ripped and tossed away documents they gave him. Essentially, ripping up documents is a habit for him. Juvel then tells him that she doesn't like it when someone ignores her opinions, as it hurts her self-esteem and makes her feel terrible all day. Max listens to her complaints, but his pride tells him why should he be careful with her since he's the one helping her. However, Juvel seems to be able to read his mind and tells Max that if it's too difficult for him to help her, then it's better to end it since she's the one who asked him for help. Max is struggling to decide how to react. Part of him feels that if he continues to be stubborn, he may never see Juvel again. However, his pride is telling him not to care about it. When he sees Juvel's glum expression, he makes a quick decision to set his pride aside and apologize to her. Obediently, he signs the contract. His sudden change confuses Juvel, but it's a good thing anyway. Juvel is relieved that the contract is finally completed, while Max feels manipulated. Oh, come on! Your thoughts are the ones that manipulate you, Max. Juvel is so excited to announce that they're lovers. She intends to ask Max to accompany her to the upcoming tea party at Count Terrence's house. Max asks Juvel if she knows who's going to come to the party, and Juvel mentions her friend Lady Rosemary and some of her other friends. Judging by her answer, Max confirms that Juvel has no idea that Mikhail will also be there. Max suddenly stands up and tells her that he will be her companion to the party. Juvel wonders why Max looks so enthusiastic. The day of the tea party. To the surprise of everyone, Veronica brings Mikhail along with her. She explains that she followed the rules and invited whoever she wanted as the host of the party. Rosemary objects, insisting that everyone should have agreed on the guest list beforehand. Mikhail interrupts her, saying that Rosemary is the one who makes decisions without consulting others. He then grabs Veronica's shoulder and criticizes Rosemary for being strict with everyone except herself. The other ladies seem to agree with Mikhail, stating that Rosemary only obtained permission after she had already invited Juvel. Therefore, they believe that it is not a big deal, as 2 guests are exceptions to the rule. Mikhail smirks and puts on a smile, thanking the ladies. Rosemary still feels uneasy about Juvel and worries that she will become uncomfortable when she finds out that Mikhail is present. Suddenly, the door opens and Juvel enters with Max, surprising everyone. Mikhail's expression turns dark upon seeing Juvel with another man. As Mikhail believed he had already removed the obstacle to attend the party, seeing Juvel with another man came as a shock. Rosemary politely asks Juvel who the man accompanying her is, to which Juvel introduces Max as her lover. The other ladies express their amazement at how handsome Max is, and comment that Juvel and Max make a great pair. Max quietly hopes that the ladies would repeat their comments louder so that Mikhail can hear them. Juvel thinks Max's acting isn't bad at all, and she should praise him once they're done. But they have forgotten something. Mikhail is still seething with anger. The first thing Max does upon meeting Mikhail in person is to glare at him, while Mikhail thinks that Max is looking down on him. The other ladies are excitedly watching a live drama unfold before them, a confrontation between the current and ex-boyfriend. Mikhail still believes that Juvel is only pretending to seek his attention. He assumes that Max is a commoner since Juvel did not mention his family name, and she randomly chose him to provoke a reaction from Mikhail. Mikhail quickly changes his mood and greets Juvel with a smile. Upon seeing Mikhail's reaction, Max becomes angry, and Juvel wonders if something is wrong with Mikhail for greeting her so happily. However, Juvel ignores Mikhail's hand and responds to him normally. Then Juvel turns to Max and expresses her gratitude for accompanying her. Max then takes Juvel's hand and wraps his arm around her, as if to show Mikhail that Juvel is now with him, while Juvel assumes that Max is nervous based on his expression. Rosemary suddenly interjects and suggests that Max join the tea party, which causes Juvel to become worried. The other ladies agree with Rosemary's suggestion, which only further exacerbates Juvel's concerns. But what's on Max's mind is that since Rosemary is on his side, she must be on Juvel's side, making her #1 ally. Just as Juvel is about to decline the offer, Mikhail suddenly disagrees, followed by Lady Veronica, who offers Max a room to wait in instead. Juvel sees this as a blessing as she was worried about taking care of Max during the tea party, but now she feels safe thanks to Veronica. Mikhail attempts to impress Veronica with his charm, hoping that Juvel will take notice. Observing Juvel's reaction, he concludes that she will never be able to forget him easily, and that he still has a hold on her, regardless of what she does. However, what Juvel actually observes is the way Veronica behaves around Mikhail, which brings back memories of when she was deeply in love with him. Despite Mikhail being destined to marry the princess, he still pretends to act sweetly towards Veronica. Juvel wishes that Veronica won't be a villainess if her story ends tragically. While waiting in the room as per Juvel's request, Max realizes he can't just sit idly without knowing what Mikhail might do. Remembering Fresh's account of how Mikhail mistreated Juvel, he stands up with a resolve to take action. Mikhail continues to work on his acting, trying to make Juvel jealous by asking Veronica to go on a picnic sometime, and Veronica takes it seriously. Mikhail's intention is to make Juvel see and hear everything he does with Veronica and act as if Juvel was in the past. However, Juvel is not paying attention to what Mikhail is doing, as she is engrossed in conversation with Rosemary and other ladies about Max. Failing to get the desired result, Mikhail feels defeated. Suddenly, Rosemary suggests that Juvel join their tasting event as the newest member. But Juvel is surprised and declines politely. Mikhail still can't believe what he sees. Juvel's expression isn't addressed to him, but to the ladies. As the other ladies express their excitement for the new member, Juvel struggles with the decision to join. However, Veronica is against it and reminds the ladies of the proper procedure for joining. Just as Juvel is about to decline again, she catches something out of the corner of her eye and is shocked to see Max watching her from a tree outside the window. Juvel worries that others might see Max and cannot concentrate on what Rosemary is explaining about the requirements. Seeing Juvel staring at the window, Mikhail's curiosity leads him to find Max on the tree, which shocks him. Juvel is distracted by how to get Max back to the room quickly, so she simply answers Rosemary's question without much thought. Just as Mikhail's eyes meet Max's, Max gives him a rude gesture, which angers Mikhail. He rises from the couch and asks for permission to get some fresh air. Veronica tries to reach his hand and follow him, but Mikhail abruptly shoves her hand away and insists on going alone, leaving Veronica shocked. Meanwhile, Juvel is still worried that someone might spot Max on the tree, but when she looks back, Max is nowhere to be found. As the other ladies express their excitement about trying Juvel's special tea, Juvel becomes confused. She had been too distracted by Max to pay attention to their conversation. When Rosemary also expresses anticipation for the tea, Juvel asks what they are talking about. They explain that they are looking forward to a tea party where Juvel will provide the special tea as a requirement for signing up. Juvel turns pale with shock. Mikhail suddenly rushes out of the room holding a sword, while Max is already waiting for him outside and even comments that it took him too long, further enraging Mikhail. While in the restroom, Juvel let out a sigh at the idea of hosting a tea party she hadn't planned for. Suddenly, Veronica enters looking upset and calls out her name, asking why Juvel had been staring at her during the tea tasting and then sighing. Juvel is taken aback by the fact that her emotions were revealed without her awareness. She clarifies that she is angry with Mikhail because he also took advantage of her in the past and his kindness was not genuine. Hearing this, Veronica becomes angry and denies that Mikhail has taken advantage of her like he did to Juvel. Juvel empathizes with Veronica, knowing how difficult it is to admit it, just as she once did. She apologizes for making Veronica uncomfortable and expresses her concern for her since Veronica reminds her of herself. Despite that, Juvel decides to leave first, reassuring Veronica that she will host the tea party and that she doesn't have to attend if she doesn't want to. Meanwhile, Mikhail is fuming with anger and his hand instinctively reaches for his sword. But before he can draw it out, Max's knee catches him off guard, causing him to fall to the ground. Surprised by Max's strength, Mikhail demands to know who he is and why he is with Juvel. Max glares back, refusing to answer, but suddenly, Mikhail's sword is at his throat. With a smirk, Max reveals that he and Juvel are lovers. This revelation only fuels Mikhail's fury, but Juvel interrupts, shouting at him to drop his sword. As he turns to face her, he calls her Juvelian, but she corrects him, insisting that he address her as Lady Floyan instead. As Mikhail puts his sword back, he can't help but feel that Juvel is distancing herself from him because of Max. In Juvel's presence, Mikhail approaches and questions her about her relationship with Max. Juvel, in turn, asks Mikhail why he drew his sword on her lover. As Mikhail begins to explain himself, he once again refers to Juvel by her name, prompting Max to remind him to address her by her title, Lady Floyan. This upsets Mikhail, and as he is about to draw his sword again, Juvel reminds him that her father will not be pleased to hear that a knight of the palace drew his sword so hastily. In a surprising turn, Juvel runs to check on Max's well-being, leaving Mikhail in disbelief. Upon seeing Juvel's concern for Max, Mikhail grabs her hand and implores her to hear him out. Max's anger flares up, and he demands that Mikhail release Juvel's hand. But Juvel calms him down and requests to speak with Mikhail for a bit. This causes Max to furrow his brow, while Mikhail takes it as a sign that he has won Juvel's favor. When Mikhail suggests they go somewhere to talk, Juvel firmly commands him to let go of her hand. This catches Mikhail off guard, while Max appears to be the victor in the situation. After Juvel teaches Mikhail a lesson and lets go of his hand, he shouts at her, accusing her of ignoring him and choosing an uneducated commoner. Juvel and Max turn around in confusion, realizing that Mikhail still thinks of her as the old her. Dude, people change. Juvel makes it clear that she has no interest in him anymore, but Mikhail confronts her, claiming that she said she loved him. Juvel clarifies that she did love him, but now she doesn't. As she and Max walk away, Juvel tells Mikhail that she doesn't want to talk to him or get involved with him anymore. The other ladies witnessing the situation slowly move away, but Veronica tries to comfort Mikhail. However, he brushes her off and tells her to stop clinging to him like an insect, causing Veronica to fall to the ground in shock. She recalls what Juvel had told her in the restroom, and tears start to stream down her face as she realizes how Juvel felt before. While in the carriage, Juvel fixes her gaze on Max and thinks about the need to instill discipline in him. She warns him about being cautious in front of others, specifically about the altercation with Mikhail, as it could lead to serious consequences. However, Max brags about his strength and insists that he can even take on 10 Mikhails at once. Juvel clarifies that she is not underestimating his abilities but is concerned about his safety. Nonetheless, Max remains arrogant and claims that nothing can harm him. Juvel then stands up, facing him directly, emphasizing that she is concerned for his well-being. Even though he may be powerful, he cannot afford to be complacent and show any weakness, especially if he has multiple enemies who may be waiting for the right moment to strike. Juvel recalls how her previous life ended due to the enemies she had made with her actions, causing them to abandon her at a critical moment. Seeing Juvel's expression, Max says he'll do what she wants, which surprises her. She hesitates, unsure if Max fully understands that his life is on the line. But Max assures her that he understands she doesn't want him to attack or fight back against nobles. Juvel is relieved that Max finally understands and thanks him for agreeing. However, Max admits that what really satisfies him is teaching people who annoy him a lesson. Despite this, seeing Juvel worried about him makes him feel like being nice is a good choice. In the Floyan residence, Max looks shocked to learn that Juvel's invitation to dinner is not just for the two of them, but also includes her father. Legis, with his sharp glare, tells Max to take a seat. However, Max remains frozen in shock, prompting Legis to repeat the command more fiercely. Dad? Could you be a little nice to our Max? Unbeknownst to Juvel, her father was actually home, which resulted in this unexpected situation. Max takes a seat beside her and the servants begin to serve the food. Juvel instructs Max to use the outermost spoon for the soup, but he becomes confused as he already mastered table manners at a young age. Before he can say anything, Juvel's reassuring expression prompts him to trust her guidance. The servant then asks how they would like their steak cooked, to which Juvel quickly orders both hers and Max's to be medium rare. Max's face pales as he hates undercooked food. Despite this, he obediently follows Juvel's guidance on which utensils to use, causing him to miss his chance to object. Legis watches them as Juvel wipes the sauce from Max's face. He thinks to himself that Juvel has been tricked once again and believes that she should not trust men so easily. When the steak arrives at the table, Juvel insists on cutting Max's steak for him, which he finds somewhat embarrassing. Observing this, Legis calls Juvel over, unhappy that Max is making her use her delicate hands to cut his food. Max becomes alarmed when he sees Legis pointing a knife at him, fearing for his safety. However, Legis merely wants Juvel to pass him Max's plate so that he can cut the steak for him. Juvel interprets this as her father's attempt to reconcile with Max. While cutting into the meat, Legis observes that the inside looks different from the outside and uses this as a metaphor to comment on Max's behavior towards Juvel. Max, on the other hand, points out the metaphor to Legis, who is pretending to accept their relationship. However, Juvel thinks that what Legis said refers to the medium-rare steak. Legis then suggests they drink some tea together later. Juvel interprets this as a sign that Legis cares about Max, although Max really just wants some alone time with Juvel. Despite this, Juvel agrees and even offers to serve them some tea that she made. Legis and Max are touched to hear that Juvel will serve them her personally made tea. However, the butler interrupts and informs Legis that the emperor has urgently summoned him to the palace. Juvel reassures Legis that he can go and that they can drink the tea later, but Legis declares that he cares more about Juvel's tea and is joined by Max in agreeing with him. So there they are, having a tea time together. Meanwhile, Juvel appears worried about the emperor's potential disdain towards her. Legis compliments her tea, which pleases Juvel. Afterward, Legis requests that Juvel leave first, stating that he needs to speak with Max. After Juvel leaves the room, Legis confronts Max, asking about his intentions towards Juvel. Max gets defensive and stands up, asking Legis what he means by Max planning something. However, Max suddenly pauses, realizing the depth of his feelings for Juvel. Despite this, Legis continues to confront Max and tells him to stop pretending to be Juvel's lover. Max blushes as he confesses his love for Juvel, leaving Legis in shock. Max tries to convince Legis that his feelings towards Juvel are genuine and that he has fallen in love with her. He recalls the moments he spent with her, initially approaching her with ulterior motives, but finding comfort and ease in her presence. He no longer feels the need to act tough around her and is even willing to do things he normally hates. Losing to her doesn't feel bad anymore, as he is afraid that she might leave him. All of these experiences have led him to the realization that he has come to love Juvel. Legis cannot believe Max's confession. However, Max stresses that he will not change his mind, even as Legis looks at him in disbelief. Max also explains to Legis that he is hurting his feelings by treating him like a demon, when he is not. Despite Max's explanation that he is not a demon, Legis still thinks of him as one who has taken his daughter. Max firmly tells Legis that he has no plans of breaking up with Juvel and leaves him stunned. Meanwhile, Juvel is wondering if Max and her father are having a nice conversation. While I can say that it was a nice confession, despite not planning any of it, Juvel sees their dinner together as a positive thing. She imagines the way Max and her father looked at each other, and finds it truly mesmerizing. Suddenly, Max knocks on the window, interrupting Juvel's daydream. She is surprised but pleased that Max is showing an improvement in his behavior by knocking first, despite entering through the window. As Juvel opens the window, she sees Max's face is red and asks if something happened to him while grabbing his face. Max's heart beats faster and louder. "Yeah, I can hear it from here." And his smile softens as he squeezes Juvel's hand. He says he gets it now. The day has come when Max feels the darkness within him is suddenly covered by a beautiful light. However, Juvel doesn't understand what he means by getting it. Max sits close to Juvel and keeps staring at her, making her feel uncomfortable. Juvel asks what he talked about with her father, and Max answers that Legis was doubting their relationship. This news stuns Juvel, despite her efforts to act affectionate towards Max. Max proposes that they spend more time getting to know each other, and they share their interests with each other. However, Juvel's mood abruptly shifts as she worries that Legis will discover the truth, given his persistence in pursuing the prince. Surprised by Juvel's words, Max asks if she hates the crown prince that much. Juvel admits that the crown prince is frightening, and there are rumors that he killed his closest servant without warning. Max cannot even reveal the reality that the servant was trying to poison him. Despite trying to convince Juvel not to judge the crown prince based on rumors, Juvel remains scared that the crown prince might threaten her life. Max feels helpless, but then he asks Juvel if she would marry the crown prince if he promised not to kill her. Juvel feels a shiver run through her body, thinking that Max is obsessed with the crown prince, but she says that she would consider it if the crown prince promised not to kill her. Max is happy to hear Juvel's answer and believes that as long as he tells Juvel that he won't kill her, they will get married. Meanwhile, Juvel cannot stop shivering as she keeps seeing the crown prince's image in her head. Abruptly, Max rises to his feet and requests permission to depart, driven by a desire to improve his reputation. It's time for him to return to the palace. As Juvelian slumbers, she experiences a sense of unease, drifting into a dream of her childhood with her mother. In this dream, her mother informs her they are about to play hide and seek, instructing her to remain concealed inside the wardrobe until her mother grants permission to emerge. The young Juvel inquires if her father will join the game, but her mother suddenly exclaims that the other person is a monstrous entity and advises her not to reveal her whereabouts. Anxious, Juvel queries what might occur if the monster discovers her. However, before her dream mother can respond, a large hand seizes her tiny neck, revealing itself as the crown prince, who ominously informs her that she will meet her demise. Startled, Juvel awakens in a state of shock. She feels unwell and contemplates calling a doctor. Her mind lingers on the dream of her mother, even though she lacks any real recollection of her. In the palace, the emperor appears furious as he reads the news. Legis finally arrives and greets the emperor, who responds with a complaint about the long wait for Legis's arrival. Legis apologizes and informs the emperor that unforeseen problems had arisen. However, the emperor appears indifferent to his explanation and promptly orders Legis to depart for the south immediately. This comes as a shock to Legis. The Emperor reveals that he has received information indicating that Margrave Lennox is planning a rebellion, as he audaciously assembled an army without the Emperor's knowledge. Margrave Lennox, the Southern Lord and a brilliant tactician, has consistently upheld a formidable army. His current assembly of troops at this particular moment strongly suggests that he is preparing for a potential invasion by the neighboring Rhaegan. Legis believes that the Emperor, who often misinterprets the loyal actions of Lennox's subjects, is making another misguided assumption. He feels that he shouldn't be separated from Juvel due to an arbitrary and seemingly useless order like this. Legis attempts to convince the Emperor by offering an explanation regarding Lennox's unwavering loyalty, highlighting how Lennox has consistently protected the Empire from Rhaegan. The Emperor, wearing a smirk, retorts that Lennox's loyalty is rooted in the fact that he is not under the Emperor's control. He also expresses no doubt about Legis's loyalty, reasoning that Legis has no option but to remain at his side. Hearing this, Legis experiences a mix of distress and powerlessness. He harbors a strong desire to eliminate the Emperor, but recognizes that he cannot do so at this moment, with his primary concern being the worry that would consume him if he left Juvel behind. His beloved daughter, who bears the wounds he has inflicted, has suffered such misfortune merely for loving a father who he believes doesn't deserve that love. Legis is resigned to the idea that it's acceptable if Juvel harbors everlasting resentment towards him, for he acknowledges that his actions are unforgivable. Nonetheless, he remains steadfast in his love for her, and it has never wavered for even a single moment. Legis contemplates whether he can simply remove the collar encircling his neck, thus granting him the freedom to love Juvel without restraint. However, his thoughts are abruptly interrupted as someone enters the room, causing both Legis and the Emperor to be taken aback. It is Max, appearing in his crown prince guise, who exclaims that he has missed his father, the Emperor. The Emperor is utterly shocked by Max's unexpected appearance, and Max questions if they were engaged in a crucial discussion. With an intimidating gaze, he presses the Emperor to divulge the subject of their conversation. This strikes fear into the Emperor's heart, as he realizes that Max has grown significantly and now poses a potential threat to him. The Emperor is concerned that Max might take action against him in Legis's absence. Legis then explains to Max that he is currently receiving a confidential order and politely requests Max to depart. However, Max raises his tone and asserts that Duke Foyen has the audacity to issue orders to him. In response, Legis informs Max that refusing to leave would equate to disobeying an imperial command. As Legis confronts Max in front of him, the Emperor realizes that he still has his loyal enforcer and considers the need to retain Legis by his side to keep Max in check. Consequently, he decides to send someone else to the south. The Empress becomes enraged upon discovering Max's return to the palace, and her frustration mounts as her attempts to dispatch assassins to eliminate Max have proven futile. Suddenly, the princess approaches and soothes her mother, suggesting that if her brother is returning, they should extend a welcoming embrace. Legis departs from the palace, contemplating the recent turn of events where the Emperor rescinded the order to send him to the south, choosing instead to maintain his protection duties. A satisfied smile forms on Legis's face as he recognizes that Max's presence can be a means to exert pressure on his own father, sparing him from the journey south. However, as Legis proceeds down the hallway, Max intercepts him and expresses his desire to have a brief conversation with Legis, seeking his approval for this discussion. In Max's room, the servant serves drinks for them, and as she exits the room, Max removes his helmet. Legis inquires about the topic Max wishes to discuss. Max, in turn, asks Legis what transpired during his conversation with the Emperor. Legis reminds Max that it was a confidential order he discussed, to which Max displays his discontent and contemplates alternative ways to compel Legis to reveal the information. Max then attempts to broach the subject of the earlier assassination attempt on his father, but Legis dismisses Max's concern. In a satirical tone, Legis remarks that the mastermind behind the attempt remains undiscovered. His stern glare hints that he is aware of Max's involvement but will overlook it if Max steers clear of Juvel. Max endeavors to assert his authority over Legis, but once again, he fails. Legis then asks permission to leave, whispering to Max that he managed to avoid being sent to the south, thanks to Max's interference. With a piercing gaze, he warns Max to keep his distance from his daughter. Frustrated, he hurls the cup near him, but fortunately, the knight in his room skillfully intercepts it, remarking that the cup is incredibly expensive. Meanwhile, Max contemplates his next move. His first idea is to send Juvel a letter from the Crown Prince, but he realizes that Legis is likely to instruct his butler to destroy any letters from him. Subsequently, Max makes the decision to seek advice from Fresha. However, the knight informs him that if advice is what Max seeks, he is capable of providing it as well. Max calls out to Victor, leading Victor to open his helmet. Max then hands his helmet to Victor, cautioning him that it won't bode well for him if his true identity is ever discovered. After this exchange, Max departs. Annoyed, Victor hurls the helmet to the ground and begins to grumble, but then Max calls out to him from behind. In response, Victor quickly makes an excuse, claiming that his hand slipped due to the helmet's polished surface. Max proceeds to ask Victor how to send a letter without alerting the master of the house. Victor appears puzzled by Max's question, prompting Max to point out that Victor is renowned as the biggest playboy in the army. Max's expression grows stern as he insists that Victor provide him with the answer. Max is in the process of tying a small piece of paper to a bird's foot and issues a threat to the bird should it fail to deliver the letter to its intended recipient. As the bird takes flight, Max wonders if Juvel, upon reading the letter, will be relieved of her concerns. In Juvel's room, she is engrossed in scribbling something on a piece of paper. Anxieties about the upcoming tasting event gnaw at her, particularly concerns that her confrontation with Veronica might deter guests from attending. While gazing out the window, she suddenly lets out a startled cry upon seeing a bird aggressively pecking at the window pane. Trembling with fear, Juvel observes the persistent pigeon's desperate attempts to breach the window. Her maid, Marilyn, enters the room bearing a tray of desserts and is taken aback by Juvel's obvious distress. Juvel implores her to shoo the persistent pigeon away. Marilyn hastily seizes the tray and flings it toward the bird. As the pigeon takes flight, Marilyn notices a letter fastened to its foot. She then informs Juvel that the bird is a carrier pigeon, which leaves Juvel puzzled. Carrier pigeons are typically employed for the transmission of confidential messages, a mode of communication that is deemed inappropriate among nobility as a matter of courtesy. This method is primarily reserved for use on the battlefield. Juvel hastily jumps to the conclusion that the letter delivered by the carrier pigeon is a threat, while Marilyn entertains the notion that it might be a love letter. Juvel ponders the situation, her instincts alerting her to the likelihood of something more sinister lurking behind this mysterious message. The pigeon returns to Max, who reacts with anger, causing the bird to tremble. Suddenly, Frisia emerges from behind Max, noting his attempt to send a letter using a pigeon. Max explains that the letter was intended for Juvel but failed to reach its destination. Frisia inquires about the content of the letter, and Max responds that he had written, "I will not kill you." Frisia feels relief that the message didn't get through, and she elucidates her thoughts on the idea, which felt like a figurative knife to Max's heart. She also advises him that if he wishes to meet Juvel as the Crown Prince, he must find a suitable pretext for the meeting, to which Max agrees. As he releases the bird, he inquires about the latest news from the palace. Frisia informs him that rumors of Margrave Lennox amassing an army have reached the Emperor's ears. Max ponders this news and deduces that the neighboring Reagan might be indicating preparations for an invasion. Frisia adds that aside from an increase in food supplies, there haven't been any other suspicious signs, and the reason given is famine relief. Hearing these explanations, Max decides to arrange a meeting with Margrave Lennox. This decision shocks Frisia, as she believes it's too perilous since Lennox has fallen out of favor with the Emperor, and such a meeting could be seen as treason. However, Max views it as an opportunity, explaining that if successful, they would not only gain control of the South, but also rally the entire empire to their cause. The stage has been set for him, and now he just needs to win the hearts of the people and leverage this opportunity to strengthen his position. On the day of the tasting event, Jewel feels weary after her shock with the pigeon the previous night, though she's relieved that she managed to resolve everything. Marilyn informs her that the guests have arrived, with Rosemary being among the first to greet her cheerfully. Following her is Veronica, whose presence surprises Jewel as she didn't anticipate Veronica's attendance. According to the Empire's customs, both the master and mistress of the house should come out to welcome guests, even for a small gathering. However, given her father's personality, Jewel assumes that he wouldn't concern himself with such formalities and intends to handle it herself. While Jewel is lost in thought, the guests are taken aback by something behind her. One lady quietly asks Rosemary if Jewel has an older brother, to which Rosemary clarifies that he is not Jewel's brother. This leaves Jewel bewildered, pondering the lady's remark about her brother. When she turns around, she is astonished to find her father descending the stairs to greet all the guests. Jewel is taken aback to see Legis, as she hadn't informed him about the party, knowing he wouldn't come out for such occasions. The guests bow in greeting to Legis, but he promptly suggests putting aside formalities. Legis then expresses his pride in Jewel for arranging the party all by herself, while affectionately patting her head. Jewel is flattered and extends her gratitude. She senses that Legis has changed, appreciating the way he now treats her as if she were his cherished daughter. As it's time to serve the tea, Rosemary is impressed by the tea's taste, and other guests also offer compliments about Jewel's tea. One lady inquires about the method to achieve the unique flavor. However, Jewel appears to be spacing out and becomes distracted when someone calls her name. She then explains how she infuses the tea with the scent of flowers by storing flower petals or fruit alongside the tea leaves, which imparts the scents into the tea and enhances the flavor. Her explanation leaves the ladies even more astounded. Yet, in reality, it's the result of her hard work and dedication, and it also serves as a tribute to the flowers she has guarded with her life. Legis observes Jewel from a distance and smiles upon seeing the happiness in her face. He contemplates whether Jewel is aware that she is the reason he has found a purpose to keep living. His mind drifts back to an event 13 years ago, when he had returned home, covered in blood, visibly frustrated as he lay on his bed. His hands, stained with blood, represented his sense of helplessness and the question of how much longer he would have to endure his life as the Emperor's enforcer. This frustration only intensified. However, his mood shifted abruptly when the door creaked open, and the young Jewel entered the room, greeting her father with cheerfulness. She approached the bed, but Legis believed he couldn't face her in his current state. With her father's lack of response, Jewel climbed onto the bed and nestled in Legis's arm. She then began to say a prayer while patting her father, her words asking for his protection and for the world to become bright and beautiful, allowing him to smile brightly too. Legis was deeply moved and tears welled up in his eyes as he realized that Jewel was his source of solace and his savior. He pledged eternal love for her. Legis's demeanor changes as he reflects on this past memory. Jewel notices the shift in his expression, and when their eyes meet, Legis abruptly turns away and departs, leaving Jewel puzzled by her father's unusual behavior. Suddenly, Veronica shares some news that the Crown Prince has returned to the capital. This revelation stuns everyone in the room, particularly Jewel. Shortly thereafter, Max arrives, offering apologies for his tardiness. As Max walks in, all the ladies are totally smitten by his looks. Jewel tells him to grab a seat next to her. When Jewel and Max catch everyone's attention, Veronica blurts out with relief that Jewel has a partner, so she won't be considered for the Crown Princess role. This shocks both Jewel and Max, but they have different perspectives. Jewel is terrified at the mention of the Crown Princess, while Max sees it as his mission to make Jewel the Crown Princess. The other ladies are horrified too, and they start gossiping about the Crown Prince. Max, hearing their hurtful comments right in front of him, can't help but feel invisible pain. He looks at Jewel, hoping she won't join in the bashing. The ladies continue spreading nasty rumors about the Crown Prince, saying he not only has a hideous face, but also a monstrous personality, which is why the previous empress banished him from the palace. Max is stunned, and Jewel feels they've crossed a line. Trying to prevent things from escalating, Juvel suggests that they shouldn't judge the crown prince since they haven't met him in person. She believes he could be much better than they assume. Max is touched by Juvel's words. The other ladies agree with her, but Juvel's true concern is that the more they trash talk the crown prince, the more danger they're putting themselves in. She just wants to prevent anyone from facing consequences for insulting the imperial family. Max is impressed by Juvel's refusal to judge someone solely based on rumors. Rosemary agrees with Max, admitting that she initially thought Juvel was scary, just like the rumors suggested. Juvel tries to avoid eye contact, feeling like she was indeed a villainess not long ago. Rosemary admires Juvel, mentioning how kind and gentle she has been, and other ladies join in, praising Juvel's acts of kindness, like sharing the secret behind her tea. Suddenly, Veronica interjects, insisting that the judgment on Juvel's membership in the tasting party should be fair and objective. She explains that the tea was a plain Darjeeling tea, but shifts the focus to complimenting it, shyly acknowledging Juvel's inclusion as a member of the tasting event. After the party ends, Juvel feels exhausted and reflects on joining the tasting group, not feeling particularly thrilled about it due to her discomfort around many people. Max recalls what Fresha told him about Juvel, how she was always the subject of gossip in society, which might explain why she treated people poorly and avoided them. Max realizes that he is drawn to Juvel because they share similar experiences. 13 years ago, people accused young Max of killing animals and labeled him as a demon who committed brutal acts. Max sought reassurance from his mother, tearfully denying his involvement and begging her not to hate him. His mother hugged him tightly and revealed the real reason she told him to stay away from her. She was worried that Isabel might have hidden poison nearby, and that she always trusted him. Remembering this memory brings comfort to Max. Turning to Juvel, Max puts on his best smile and gently pats her head, assuring her that she will do great in the tasting group. Juvel blushes, moved by Max's reassurance. Suddenly, Max reveals that he has a job to take care of and won't be able to see her for a while. Juvel is surprised and asks if it's a mercenary job. Max assures her not to worry, saying it's a piece of cake for him. Feeling relieved, Juvel thinks Max must be stronger than he appears. Max notices her smudged makeup, and when Juvel tries to clean it with her handkerchief, he playfully takes it away, leaning on her and jokingly telling her not to flirt with other men. He emphasizes that they are a couple now, even though it's just a contractual relationship. Then Max bids her farewell and suddenly disappears without a word from Juvel. 2 months have passed since the tasting party test, and they've had 4 more tea parties. Juvel has gotten close to the members of the tea party, but she still feels empty and lonely. Her father has been busy lately, and Max hasn't reached out to her at all. While pondering her loneliness, Juvel overhears some ladies talking about Reagan declaring war on Ashet. She and Veronica, who are on their way to the temple, stop and listen to the conversation. Veronica notices Juvel's concern and assures her there's no need to worry. She heard that Ashet had a great victory thanks to the crown prince. Veronica explains that she overheard Rosemary's big brother saying that the crown prince and Margrave Lennox successfully defended the empire with preparations they started 2 months ago. The crown prince bravely charged into the enemy camp, beheaded their commander, and ended the battle. The palace is planning a victory celebration a month from now, and every noble will attend without exception. Juvel is taken aback by the news. Meanwhile, Legis is in disguise, meeting someone at a bar. He apologizes for seeing the man in such circumstances. The man says it's all right, considering they're both busy. He mentions how Max showed off by winning the war, and for him, as a magician unable to set foot in his homeland, it brings a glimmer of hope if Max becomes the emperor. Revealing his purpose meeting in secret with the man, Legis came to see the man regarding Cersei's ring. Back at the temple, Veronica notices Juvel looking like she's about to collapse any second and tells her to take a rest while she seeks help from a knight. While Juvel waits for Veronica, a priest approaches her and asks to borrow her hand. Before Juvel can inquire about the priest's intentions, she forcefully grabs her hand and begins speaking as if delivering a prophecy. She mentions something about a time traveler and how Juvel has made a wrong choice that could lead to tragic sadness and sacrifice from someone who loves her. Juvel pulls her hand back, feeling both uncomfortable and furious, and walks away from the priest. However, the priest stops her and asks for a donation of 1 gold coin in exchange for the prophecy. Meanwhile, near a fountain, people are whispering about a crying lady. The lady is Princess Beatrice, seeking solace by shedding tears alone. Her mother, Isabel, became angry with her after learning about the palace's plans to hold a victory celebration near Beatrice's upcoming age ceremony. While walking away from the priest, Juvel appears annoyed and accidentally bumps into the princess. They lock eyes, and Juvel apologizes, unaware that the lady is the princess. Noticing the lady's tears, Juvel considers leaving her alone. However, hesitating, Juvel turns back and offers Beatrice her handkerchief. Instead of expressing gratitude, Beatrice becomes angry and accuses Juvel of pitying her. Nevertheless, Beatrice uses the handkerchief to wipe her nose. She then confides in Juvel, sharing how people's expectations weigh heavily on her and how she sometimes wants to give up. Juvel suddenly asks if Beatrice has a coin and tells her to throw it into the fountain and make a wish, even though Beatrice doesn't believe it will make a difference. Beatrice reluctantly tosses the coin into the fountain, and to their surprise, it lands right in the center. Juvel tells her that means her wish will come true. Beatrice remains skeptical, stating that it won't solve her problems. However, Juvel smiles and tells her that sometimes gestures like that can uplift her spirits. Just then, Juvel hears the knights and Veronica searching for her, so she bids farewell to Beatrice, expressing her hope that things work out for her. Recalling her mother's teachings to be perfect and not show weakness, Beatrice thinks she shouldn't rely on acts of kindness like that. She stomps on Juvel's handkerchief and walks away feeling annoyed. In the Floyan residence, Legis is anxious, waiting for Juvel who hasn't shown up yet. But then Juvel finally rolls up in the carriage, looking exhausted. She's taken aback when Legis calls her out for being late. Juvel explains that she got caught up in a long chat at the temple, which is why she ended up coming home late. Legis gets it and expresses his worries. Juvel is surprised to see that Legis isn't angry at all. Juvel then reveals about feeling frustrated and wanting a change of pace, which made her lose track of time. Seeing Juvel's face, Legis wonders if she's been feeling down ever since Max went off to battle. Legis starts to think that maybe he has no choice but to accept Juvel and Max's relationship, as Max will be the one protecting her when he's not around. In the dining room, Juvel has zero appetite. Even the cherry tomato reminds her of Max. She regrets not asking Max to send her a letter while he's away. Noticing Juvel's gloomy expression, Legis brings up the fact that the Crown Prince has won a major victory and will be back soon. He also mentions the victory banquet, assuming that Juvel must be looking forward to it. Juvel is caught off guard. She starts slicing her meat aggressively and tells her father that attending the banquet is more of an obligation than something she's excited about. Legis asks if she has a dress ready for the party. Handing her a blank check, Legis tells her not to worry about the cost, and that she can buy any dress she wants. Juvel is shocked and wonders if Legis wants her to look stunning in front of the Crown Prince. Locking eyes with Legis, she can't refuse and ends up thanking him. Meanwhile, Max is tearing through the fields on his horse. His knight tells him to slow down before he kills the horse, but Max insists on keeping up the pace. He can't wait any longer to see Juvel. Spotting Juvel still awake by the window, Max feels a sense of relief. His face turns red as he knocks on the window. The horses and knights are beyond exhausted, exclaiming that Max must be superhuman since he traveled a distance that would take them 4 days in just a single day. The knights wonder why Max was in such a hurry, aside from his plan to make his men's lives miserable. Nervously, Max wonders if Juvel will still welcome him. He notices her with her maid and decides to wait outside. It seems that Juvel is pleading to use something to help her sleep, but her maid advises against it due to potential side effects from excessive use. However, seeing Juvel's desperation, her maid feels helpless. Despite her efforts to fall asleep, Juvel's mind continues to race with thoughts of tomorrow's schedule, making the party outfit and meeting her friends afterwards. Suddenly, she hears a soft voice calling her name. Max appears before her. Wondering if it's a dream, Juvel reaches out and pinches Max's cheeks. Unsure if it's reality or a dream, she suddenly bursts into tears, expressing her worry about him and her anger that he didn't contact her at all. Amidst her tears, Juvel admits that she thought something terrible had happened to him, or that he had grown tired of her and left. In response, Max hugs the teary-eyed Juvel, reassuring her that he will send her a letter if he ever leaves her side for a while. Gradually, Juvel calms down and falls asleep in Max's arms. Observing her peaceful sleep, Max steals a glance at the sleeping potion by the bedside, acknowledging its effectiveness, but also realizing that it dulls the sense of reality, almost like being intoxicated. Max plans to come back tomorrow but is suddenly taken aback as Juvel grabs his collar and pulls him closer while still asleep. Max's heart races as if Juvel is insisting he stay the night. He gently strokes her hair and decides to sleep beside her. Meanwhile, Legis visits his wife's grave, reminiscing about their past moments together. He recalls a time when they both cried after something happened, and Amelia blamed herself for ruining Legis' life. However, Legis reassured her, expressing that everything would be fine because his love for her was eternal. Suddenly, Legis notices a card attached to the flower on the grave, sent by the magician he had met before. The magician informs Legis that he is looking into what he requested and will reach out soon. He also mentions Juvel, referring to her as Legis' treasure. Memories flood back from their past life when Juvel died. Legis knows that he can never be forgiven for her death back then. He declares that this time, he swears to save her.